Tensions are on the rise in the South China Sea as China's militia presence grows, prompting responses from neighboring nations. In this video, we delve into the latest developments as the United States and the Philippines embark on joint flight operations amid escalating tensions. Recent reports have highlighted China's aggressive actions in the South China Sea, including the deployment of its militia forces to disputed territories. This has raised concerns among neighboring countries and the international community. In response to China's growing presence, the United States and the Philippines have announced joint flight operations in the region. These maneuvers aim to assert freedom of navigation and demonstrate solidarity against any attempts to disrupt maritime activities. The number of Chinese maritime militia vessels around key features across the South China Sea grew by 35% last year as Beijing continued to bolster its presence amid rising regional tensions, according to data by the Washington-based Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative. A report released on Wednesday and based on satellite imagery of 9 features in the sea, including reefs and shoals, identified an average of 195 militia ships present on any given day. The increase from a year earlier was accompanied by a dramatic shift in vessels to Mischief Reef in the summer of 2023, when over 180 boats were observed gathered there from July. The reef is also claimed by the Philippines and Vietnam. The data shows that China's militia is as active as ever, the report says. The reason for this increase, an anomaly compared to the previous year's peak of only 37 vessels at Mischief. The initiative, part of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, describes China's maritime militia as a force of vessels ostensibly engaged in commercial fishing, but which in fact operate alongside Chinese law enforcement and military to achieve political objectives in disputed waters. Located within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, Mischief Reef has been controlled by China for nearly 3 decades, with Manila accusing Beijing of turning it into a militarized artificial island. In response, Manila has established a military outpost at the nearby Second Thomas Shoal in the form of a rusting warship it grounded there in 1999. Last year, that ship, the BRP Sierra Madre, became the center of renewed tensions between the two nations amid water cannon fire and near collisions with Chinese ships during attempts to resupply troops stationed at the outpost. While Chinese militia vessels seen active around the Second Thomas Shoal typically operate out of Mischief, the summer surge at the reef appears mostly unrelated to efforts to oppose the resupply missions. Instead, the purpose-built professional militia ships from the southern Chinese province of Hainan routinely worked with the China Coast Guard to physically oppose Philippine resupply missions to the BRP Sierra Madre. Apart from the groupings at Mischief Reef, the largest consistent collection of militia ships continued to be seen at Hughes and Whitsun Reefs. The report said a persistent militia presence was also maintained near China's outpost at Gavin Reefs, and smaller groups could be seen at the reefs east of Philippine-occupied Thitu and at Iroquois Reef. Amid increasing tensions in the South China Sea with China and fears of how a conflict over Taiwan could jeopardize the country's territories in the Luzon Strait, the Philippines is looking to prioritize its naval forces in a revised military modernization plan. Despite Manila's encounters with China in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, including the construction of several military bases on artificial islands and run-ins with Chinese vessels over the last decade, the armed forces of the Philippines remain under-equipped, experts agree. The Philippine Navy has lagged behind many of its Southeast Asian peers for decades as a consequence of relative neglect, as the country focused then heavily on internal security. This also resulted, most crucially, in a neglect of the country's maritime domain. Philippine maritime interests, especially in the West Philippine Sea, have been compromised. Colin Coe, a research fellow at the Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies under the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. Following the 2012 Scarborough Shoal incident, which resulted in the effective Chinese occupation of the feature within the Philippine EEZ. Manila restarted a 1990s-era Modernization Act previously set aside due to financial constraints. The revised Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Act called for the procurement of equipment, particularly naval vessels and aircraft, to raise the AFP's capabilities and determine further encroachment in the South China Sea. The Philippine Navy was set to spend over $40 billion on procurements in 2 4-year and 1 5-year-long phases, known as Horizons, between 2013 and 2028. Today, only a fraction of the spending originally planned has been executed. The armed forces failed to complete the first 2 Horizon phases due to a lack of funds from the Philippine government. As tensions with China have risen over the last year, Manila has started to revise its plan. Following incidents at Scarborough Shoal, Second Thomas Shoal, and elsewhere in the South China Sea in 2022 and 2023, the Philippines has bolstered its naval deployments to the region. Philippine lawmakers also pledged increased funding for the Navy and Coast Guard. Manila's assertive transparency campaign of 2023 pushed military modernization from one of many budget line items to a national imperative. This is a crucial, tangible way in which transparency contributed to Philippine national resilience against People's Republic of China coercion, he added. In January, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. approved a $35 billion acquisition list put forward by the Armed Forces of the Philippines for a revised version of Horizon 3 almost equivalent to the total cost projected for the original program. In contrast, the previous administration only approved $5.6 billion for Horizon 2. Dubbed Horizon 3, this revised phase seeks to not only obtain new equipment, but also remove inefficiencies, streamlining the procurement process and developing a better defense strategy. Secretary of National Defense Gilbert Teodoro told reporters that the Philippines has to marshal the resources of making the best of what we have, making sure that acquisitions made are supportable and sustainable and redundancy is built in. We have said that the AFP and Department of National Defense will not be a vendor's paradise. We will not consider ourselves a vendee but a client. These developments highlight the importance of diplomatic efforts to address territorial disputes and ensure stability in the region. Countries must work together to uphold international law and prevent any further escalation. As tensions continue to simmer in the South China Sea, it is crucial to stay informed about the latest developments and their implications. Subscribe to our channel for more updates on geopolitical hotspots around the world.